A lifetime of anti-Russian propaganda taught Americans that Russians are evil people who forever foment conflict. They are shocked to learn that American troops fought in Russia to overthrow its government in 1918. Tales of the American Empire produced several short videos revealing an endless war with Russia by the British and American empires. They first targeted Russia for conquest in 1917, after the people of Russia revolted against its monarchy. People were starving while losing a pointless war against Germany. The revolutionary Bolshevik government ousted the Russian royals and quickly reached a peace agreement with Germany to free resources to feed and house people. British and American oligarchs were furious about this successful peasant uprising and sent troops to help restore the monarchy. But World War I ended, and the American and British public were not keen for another war, so troops were withdrawn in 1919 as the Soviet Union formed. See the two videos linked below. The Anglo-American alliance still schemed to overthrow the Soviet Union, as it enjoyed some economic success and worker prosperity. They also worried about Germany, which posed a similar threat with its successful socialist economic programs in the 1930s. American and British tycoons were appalled by populist governments that devoted resources to help workers and feared the spread of their ideas. War was declared on Germany after it joined the Soviets to invade and partition Poland in 1939. The British and French were wary of declaring war on the Soviet Union until 1940, when they approved a plan to send forces to Finland to help fight a stalled Soviet invasion. But the Finns signed a peace deal with the Soviets before these forces arrived. Another plan was approved for a huge force of 100 divisions to invade Russia from the south. This plan ended with the German invasion of France in 1940. But the German war machine used much Soviet oil. Despite Britain's dire situation, mad British Prime Minister Winston Churchill approved a plan to bomb Russian oil facilities. British bombers were deployed in 1941 for this bombing campaign, but the plan was scrapped when the Germans invaded the Soviet Union in 1941. See the article linked below. The Soviet Union suffered greatly during World War II as it destroyed the bulk of the German army. The United States shipped billions of dollars in economic and military aid to help. This was welcome, but Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin correctly suspected the Allies prefer that Russians do the fighting and dying. American Senator Harry Truman told the press in 1941 why he supported aid to the Soviet Union. Quote, "If we see that Germany is winning, we ought to help Russia. And if Russia is winning, we ought to help Germany. And that way let them kill as many as possible. Although I don't want to see Hitler victorious under any circumstances." End quote. Allied forces avoided fighting the Germans by delaying an invasion of France. They conducted easy invasions of French North Africa and its other colonies to destroy that empire and to expand their own, then mostly took on weak Italy. The Allies didn't land in France until Germany was defeated as its forces were retreating from the Soviet Union. See the short video linked below, The Anglo-American War on France. Before the war ended in 1945, Winston Churchill ordered preparations to attack Soviet forces in Europe. Operation Unthinkable was to be a surprise attack on Soviet forces in Germany. It was supported by American General George Patton, who stated the Americans had fought for democracy in all of Europe and couldn't allow the Soviet army to remain in Eastern Europe. The Soviets claimed they needed a buffer zone to prevent future invasions. They had twice the ground forces in Europe compared to the Allies, and Japan had yet to be defeated, so Allied attack plans were shelved and kept secret until 1998. Soon after World War II ended, a perpetual Cold War began. In George Orwell's 1948 fiction classic, 1984, he describes this endless war. Quote, "The war is not meant to be won. It is meant to be continuous." End quote. Orwell was referring to the continuous Anglo-American War on Russia that began in 1917. Frictions had continued after World War I because of unjust and senseless British and French redrawing of national boundaries throughout Europe. This sparked smaller wars in the 1920s that led to World War II. Orwell watched the Cold War appear to continue the warfare state with Russia as a permanent enemy. During his last year in office, American President Dwight Eisenhower's primary goal was to end this war, with a plan he called a Crusade for Peace. He was the former Allied military commander during World War II and developed a friendship with Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev, who also played a key role in the Allied victory. They had several friendly meetings and planned for a détente resulting in deep cuts in military spending. A meeting was scheduled for May 14, 1960 in Paris, where a major disarmament agreement would be signed. Many powerful men in Washington, D.C. opposed peace, and 4 conspired to sabotage this agreement. 2 weeks before this meeting, they ordered an unauthorized U-2 spy flight over key bases in the center of the Soviet Union. Its pilot was captured after crash landing his aircraft because its fuel was sabotaged. See the short video link below. This ended Eisenhower's peace effort. A few weeks later, he denounced these warmongers on national television and warned of a secret military-industrial complex. The next year, the U.S. military placed 45 newly designed Jupiter nuclear-armed missiles in Italy and Turkey, capable of hitting the Soviet Union. Soviet complaints were ignored, so it began placing nuclear-armed missiles in Cuba. This led to a serious confrontation that became known as the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. The world was lucky this didn't spark a world war. President John Kennedy ignored his generals and defused the crisis by agreeing to remove the threatening missiles. See the short video linked below. Many other serious incidents over the next 40 years almost led to war, until leaders signed treaties to reduce tensions and confrontations. In 1989, Russian leaders decided that ruling the Soviet Empire had impoverished the Russian people. Senior Russian diplomat Georgi Arbatov announced to an American audience, quote, "We are going to do a terrible thing to you. We are going to deprive you of an enemy," end quote. The Russians quickly dismantled their empire by granting Soviet republics independence and withdrawing troops from Eastern Europe after the Americans promised to reduce its troop levels and not to move forces into Eastern Europe. The American empire proudly declared that it won the Cold War as the Russian flag appeared over the Kremlin. However, the American military-industrial congressional complex worried that it could no longer justify massive military budgets. It quickly found new enemies in the Middle East, but they didn't justify new nuclear weapons or ultra-expensive ships and aircraft. They needed to restart the war on Russia. This effort will be explained in Part 2.